friends, and thank you for joining me today inside the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop, a podcast dedicated to helping you get back up again in parenting, business, and life. I'm super excited about today's show on trauma. I'm so grateful to be joined today by clinical expert Dr. Truth. Dr. Truth is a proud alumni of Fisk University. She holds a bachelor's and master's in psychology and clinical psychology, respectively. Dr. Truth attained her doctorate degree in clinical psychology from the Illinois School of Professional Psychology, and she hails from Chicago. She's also an active member of the Atlanta Black Chamber of Commerce, the Atlanta Urban League, and an on-call crisis therapist for suicidal and homicidal patients. Dr. Truth is the founder of Dr. Truth and Associates. Her practice is located in Atlanta, Georgia since January of 2019. She has over 15 years of clinical experience with working in mental health. Dr. Truth is also the founder of Faith, Hope, Love Community. This is a community where Dr. Truth's passion is empowering individuals with the skills and resources to break generational cycles of unhealthiness by changing old patterns of thinking, feeling, and behavior into new ones. She also provides so many workshops and trainings, and some of them include race-based traumatic stress and racial discrimination, mental health and spirituality, coping strategies for grief, loss of a close relative, healthy, intimate love relationships versus situations, assessing for suicide prevention, juvenile adult criminal expungement for ex-offenders and returning citizens. Dr. Truth has a plethora of experiences, and all of her experiences, as well as everything she does, will be available on our website that launches in January. But friends, right now I am so excited to bring you this show. So let's get started. Grab your coffee, your tea, what have you, and let's get into defining trauma. And she's going to give us so much information, how to get in touch with her, as well as how to heal, so many resources. And y'all, Dr. Truth has dropped some gems inside this show. She's giving us a little extra that we didn't even know about relationships. So let's get started. So today we're joined by Dr. Truth, a licensed eligible clinical psychologist, and she's going to tell us all about trauma and some ways that we could solve our inbred trauma, some ways that we could solve issues that we've been going through our entire lives related to trauma. So the topic of this show is defining trauma. What does trauma do to our lives? So welcome to the show, Dr. Truth.
Thank you.
Today, I wanted to jump right in, and I wanted you to describe or define, I should say, trauma for our audience. What is trauma?
Okay, so trauma or mental health trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event, such as an accident, a rape, or a natural disaster. Some people are dealing with their personal traumas, and some people are dealing with our collective traumas or multiple traumas on top of our personal traumas, i.e. COVID-19, i.e. police brutality and Black Lives Matter. And so sometimes even people who have trauma can be re-traumatized. So you don't necessarily have to experience the trauma to actually be affected by the trauma.
Does that connect to secondhand trauma?
Yes, ma'am. So you can witness someone else's trauma. So as we are witnessing and watching the news and seeing multiple deaths across the world, we can be traumatized or we can be re-traumatized. And that's why one of those, and I know I'm skipping ahead, one of the things that we suggest when people come in for trauma, especially around world events, we suggest that they limit their media consumption. So limit the time that you are watching the news and listening to the radio or anything, even social media. Especially in the mornings and right before you go to bed.
Yes, because I've noticed that you could be scrolling through social media and you see just somebody shot,
You see somebody's in a fight. You see somebody's robbed. So when I was growing up, I'm 48 years old. We didn't have social media. We didn't have access to all this trauma, sensory trauma throughout our lives. We didn't even have an opportunity. If we didn't turn the TV, and sometimes we weren't even allowed to turn TV, we have to stay on one channel. But now kids are scrolling through social media. They have Facebook, they have Instagram. They're exposed to what we were when we were growing up. So, okay, so does most trauma go back to our childhood?
Not for everyone, but we know that early factors and early, things that happen, traumas that happen earlier in our lifetime can affect us more significantly because one, our brain is still developing, our bodies are still developing, 0 through 5 especially. So we have childhood trauma scales and checklists that we actually provide to incoming clients. And if they check majority of these traumas on this list, then that means they have a higher risk or more risk factors than other people in comparison. So they may need more protective factors and they may need more interventions because their childhood traumas have not been addressed or have not been addressed adequately.
Okay, now, what are protective factors?
Okay, so I'm going to define risk factors and protective factors. And so risk factors are those factors that, for example, Rutter, Rutter, he has a list of risk factors. Some of those risk factors are overcrowded homes, so living in a house with multiple people, multiple families. Risk factors are living in low socioeconomic communities, impoverished communities with maybe gang violence or violence, period. Growing up in homes with violence, domestic violence, having a parent that has been incarcerated or is incarcerated at a young age, having a parent that is on substance abuse or abusing substances. And those are just a few of the risk factors. Some of the protective factors that Dr. Carl Bell talks about, he's a Black psychiatrist, he talks about some of the protective factors. And so an adult as a protective shield to shield that child from some of these risk factors helps. And that adult does not necessarily have to be a parent. Sometimes that could be a church member. Sometimes that can be a neighbor. That can be a cousin, an older cousin. That could be an older sibling. But usually they're an adult and they're protecting that child. That's one of the protective factors. Another protective factor is self-efficacy. So does that child feel like they have something that is internal, intrinsic to them that they do well? So it's attached to self-esteem, but it's also something that they can do, that they gain pride in doing. At the beginning of my field, at the beginning of my tenure in the mental health field, I interviewed lots of children in the mental health juvenile justice system, and a lot of them could not name one positive thing about themselves. They couldn't name one intrinsic value about themselves. So they would say, I like my shoes, or I want to be a basketball player, a baseball player, a football player. And I always say, but what else can you, what else do you have that nobody else can take away? And a lot of times they are receiving negative messages from family members that may meet some of those risk factors that we talked about. So substance abusing, incarcerated. And so the parents may be traumatized and also re-traumatize and or negatively influence the child of the next generation. So they're passing on the trauma. And that's not how you pass on the trauma by talking down to them. But some parents are traumatized and have multiple traumas. And some of what comes out of people who are traumatized mouths, because they don't feel secure or loved in themselves may come out negatively towards their child. So they're projecting some of that anger and or hurt or unhappiness onto their children unknowingly. Sometimes it's knowingly, sometimes it's unknowingly and unconscious. So some of the other protective factors are the community as the social fabric. And so we talk about community in context. So we used to say in the Black community, especially, that you would get a whooping if the neighbors saw you doing something.
Yes.
So, or correction, let me say that, a correction or a reprimand or whatever. If they saw you doing something and then you get in trouble again when your parent came home.
Yes.
But we have to get back to community and not just in that context, but in multiple contexts, because even when you moved into the neighborhood, your problem is my problem is your problem. How can we collectively help you if you're struggling? Because it could be me or it could be my child. So do you need a babysitter today? Can I help out? Welcome to the neighborhood. Can I bring you a pie or a cake? Just being neighborly. That helps us to do well, because not at all times it takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
Let's just sum it up like that. It takes a village to raise a child. And there's no parent manual. So when we have young mothers or young fathers that are teenagers trying to raise children in our communities, then who shores them up? Right. Who helps them? Who surrounds them? And sometimes that was in our church, sometimes it's in our spiritual community, and sometimes that's our neighbors in our neighborhood. So how can we become more neighborly to help?
Yes, and I think that, you have a young mother and she's coming from a traumatized home and she doesn't have community. All she has is judgment. So she might be wearing the tight clothes, or she might be hanging out, but she's trying to find herself. Because she's traumatized, she's trying to raise this child, but she doesn't land in safe arms. All she lands in is more judgment, and the cycle continues. I did another interview with a mental health counselor. He was telling me that when a child is traumatized, that their whole life, the test that you're talking about, the risk factors are so much higher because their whole life, they're trying just to feel better, just to feel a whole, their whole life, whether it's drugs, sex, alcohol, whatever it is. So I think community is so important. Just like when we were young, the neighbor could whoop you. My grandmother, best friend, Miss Marie, would tell on us, and, we would get a whooping from her, a whooping from my grandma. But nowadays, it seems like it's not that bonded community, like from the 70s, or the 60s. Okay, so how does trauma run our lives?
It can affect the next generation, not just you. It also affects our relationships with others, our intimate relationships with our partners. Trauma can affect the way that we view love, the way that we view safety and what it means to feel safe, and normalcy. So we may feel that to be in a relationship is to be hurt, is to be hit, is to be, if we're coming from a physically abusive or we witness domestic violence, then we see that as normal. And we view that as love, and that is not necessarily love. And again, some of these things are not consciously done. They're unconsciously done. So we don't necessarily go out and ask for somebody to beat us, but something in us feels that we only deserve that, but we deserve more than that. And so that takes some changing in our thoughts and changing in our feelings, and also changing in our narrative. Because just because we came from a home that was trauma filled does not mean that we have to continue to live in chaos or in a trauma filled relationship in life. We can choose better. We can choose to heal our traumas. And that's what many people are doing, today. So I know Therapy for Black Girls is doing a lot of teaching and psychoeducation around trauma, especially for Black women, letting us know, like, one, our body is not for everybody, it's ours. So we can say no. Also, our body and our essence is not only to work.
Right.
The NAP ministry talks about that, where we deserve rest. Yes. We deserve for our life to feel good to us.
Yes.
And we don't have to continue to work from sun up to sundown. But again, that's some of our psychological trauma from years and years. If we want to go all the way back to the Ma'afa, and we're talking about slavery, and not all Blacks came from slaves. But again, some of that is ingrained. Some of that is unconscious, that we feel we need to work hard to earn more money or whatever it is, or to earn our keep. Yeah. And that is not true. That is false.
Or could it also be to have the foundation that we didn't have when we were growing up? Because I can remember in the salon industry, me working 6 days a week, and I'm working from sun up to sundown. I had one child at the time. He's almost 30 now, but I can remember working so crazy, like sun up, sundown, and my coworkers would say, let's go on a cruise together. And I would always say, no, I have to work. And it was almost like I was a machine. And I have had childhood trauma. And I look back at those days and I was like, why was I working like that? I didn't want to take any time off. They would go on vacation after vacation and I would never go. But it was something in me that I guess wanted to have a foundation for him, that trauma kept coming back, that I wasn't worthy enough to just relax or take this vacation.
And yes, you are worthy.
Yes. Now I know that word. Back to what you said about women choosing themselves over relationship. This plays out so much to me dealing with women as a stylist. I'm seeing women throughout the years, like highly educated women, but it seems like they would get way down in the barrel, at the bottom of the barrel, and come up with a man that was just, you're like, really? Is this real? But it's something on the inside, like they're educating themselves, they're getting to a higher plane in life, but it's something on the inside with the relationships that is not connecting because of certain traumas they've experienced. Can you speak to that a little bit to help women?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we deserve. And so when you say we're going to the bottom of the barrel, necessarily, I don't know what that means. I could know what that means.
Okay,
but
that means, to me, it means like, okay, you've educated yourself. So now you will allow someone to maybe sleep at home all day, not work, maybe beat you up, maybe talk to you any kind of way. And it's like I kept seeing this cycle over and over and over. And not that you are better than anybody. Nobody's better than anybody, but you deserve, as a woman who's worked hard to cultivate your life and your mind. I kept seeing something missing on the inside, that they just could not get the same type of love in return, basically, from a mate.
So I'm going to say this. I think that sometimes we're measuring success in ways that are not the only ways to measure success. Mm-hmm. And I had to have this conversation with one of my doctoral professors. Mm-hmm. Because I had false ideas of who I would marry or who I would date as a highly educated woman. And this was at the master's program, but I knew that I was going to a doctorate program. And I asked her, who does she marry? Because I thought that it would be marrying down if I didn't marry somebody at the same level of education as me. But there's so many other levels of success that I did not take into account. Like I literally wrote my master's thesis on who will Black women marry with higher education, because we know that there are not as many Black men with the same, the higher levels of education. But that does not mean that there are not as many Black men that are available for us to marry. That just means that we may be dismissing them or overlooking them because we're looking for somebody with the degrees.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily add up. So anyway, my doctoral professor told me that she married somebody who didn't have a doctorate. I said, what? Like, this blew my mind. And my parents don't have doctorates, okay? Right. My parents...
Not a lot of people have doctorates per capita. Like,
yes. But again, that thought, just having the conversation, because some of our thoughts are not aligned with truth, for lack of better words. And if we don't have these conversations in our circles of people, women that we know, that are giving us good information, mature information, and not because I've heard all types of things from women. Look at his shoes to see if he has money. Only date him if he buys you Gucci purses. I don't know purses, but an expensive purse. All these rules that are false, because that's not even what I'm looking for or what we should be looking for in context of who can protect me, who can provide for me. Are you spiritually strong?
Right.
Can you care for me emotionally? Are you in touch with your emotions? And are you doing some introspection to grow yourself? And am I? Because again, I read in the book, The Love Lies by Debrina Jackson Gandy. Yeah. She talks about how you create the list for what you want. You write down all these lists. So she has you write 25 things. Oh my goodness. I was writing. This is what I want. This is what, financially secure and emotionally astute. And this is, all these different things. At the end, she said, all those things that you just wrote on that list, do you have them? Yeah. I said,
But what's important to me is this. I'm not speaking of that. I'm speaking of not necessarily a degree, because I know everybody does not have to have a degree. That is one of the biggest fallacies that we've been told probably our whole life. You do not have to have a degree. There's entrepreneurship. There's creativity. I'm just speaking to women that have really prepared themselves. And when I say reach to the bottom of the barrel, I mean to get someone that's not fulfilling to them, as far as they might not even have a job. You can have a job now. You can, you can have a company. You could rake yards. You could cut hair. These are careers. Yeah. But I've seen women just totally give up in that area, and everything else is strong. I talk to women about that too. Like, you don't have to, just because you have a PhD or you are a doctor, you don't have to marry a doctor. Are you sitting around waiting for that to happen when there are so many other available men? So I think that's two different perspectives. I was speaking about primarily women who've experienced trauma. They're in panic mode, so they're fixing things in their lives. They don't want their lives to look like financially how they grew up. So now they're at their apex, and now they're reaching back and getting someone that, they're basically, I've seen men live off of women, lie repeatedly to women, but they can't see that side. But they can see the other side where they need to get themselves together.
So I'm going to respond to you in a similar fashion to how the list is. So we're talking about what we want in a man and what we are attracting in that man. So if we're going to the bottom of the barrel, then that may mean that something in our lives is still at the bottom of the barrel. We date at the level of our self-esteem.
Okay.
So
right
just
there,
because it appears that the woman is successful,
right.
again,
Right.
she may be successful. Exactly. She may be successful in the area of the external, the areas of degrees or success in business or in salary. That does not mean that she has done the work emotionally, or that she has done the work spiritually, or that she has done the work relationally. Again, we all have mother wounds or father wounds or both. Or we have some holes, like you talked about before, in our soul, or wherever you want to say those holes are, that we're trying to fill. And no man and no woman can fill a hole that was supposed to be filled by you feeling whole and complete.
Now, how do we build that muscle, fill that hole? Is it through therapy? So we can make clearer decisions for our lives based on relationships, the relationships we're choosing.
So therapy is one way. Yes, ma'am. Therapy is one way. I would also say doing your personal work,
Yes.
And so that's different and defined differently for everyone. Some people find that in their spirituality. Some people find that in their walk with God or whoever they believe as their higher power. But yes, some people do that through coaching.
Yes.
Some people do that through journaling. Some people do that through introspection and or self-help and self-growth books. It's so many different ways.
Yes.
But we have to work on what our issues and areas of growth are, and we all have them, even myself.
Yes.
That's the room that can never be filled up, the room for improvement.
Right.
So personal and professional development was one of the best classes that I've ever taken in my doctorate program. But we have to continually grow. We have to continually receive feedback from whoever those people in our lives are that we allow to pour into us. So who is our spiritual mentor? Who is our career mentor? You have to continue to grow in your career as well. And you have to receive feedback, both negative and positive feedback, in order to grow to the next level. And it's sometimes uncomfortable. So yes, it's gonna hurt. Yes, you're going to reopen some wounds and scabs from childhood if you have not dealt with those issues in order to do better in your next relationship with yourself. So this is how I view it. Okay, so everybody doesn't believe in God and spirituality, but my first relationship is with God or my higher power.
Yes. The
next relationship is with myself. Okay. And then the third relationship is with others. So with my intimate mate, or my family, friends, coworkers, and everyone else. Yes. But if that first one is not correct, if that second one is not correct, then the third one is not going to be correct.
Right.
So we have to get it all aligned. Right. If you're not aligned in yourself, if you don't feel happy, whole, and complete with yourself, no other relationship will work.
Yes. And I think what you said is so important to have. I think we all need a life mentor. Like we need to go through life with a mentor. And I was studying last summer. One of my healing factors has been self-development reading. I love to read books. Over the last 10 years, I've probably read about 200 books. But last summer, I was studying Dr. Brene Brown. And she was saying that when you have to speak shame, when you're in shame or trauma, you have to develop a love circle, people that you could go to really release that. Everybody needs that. And one of our daughters had a recent incident where she needed to speak to me directly. Her father and I picked her up from school and she was like, no, I just need to speak to mommy. I just need to speak to mommy. And he was like, well, you don't want to tell me. She said, no, I don't need to tell you. I need to speak to mom. But she's a daddy girl. Mm-hmm. But her heart wanted to speak to a woman. Yeah. And so I recognized that connection from one of Dr. Brene Brown's books where we need to speak about things that has happened to us. And I imagine children in trauma who have had no option to speak, who said, go sit down. You know, if they want to speak shame, if they want to speak their trauma, they don't have those resources because they're constantly being beat up, verbally, emotionally. And so what do you do with that? And so that leads me to my next question. What population have you seen the most trauma with? Like, you've dealt with juveniles. What has been the main population? Has it been young men, young women, Black boys, Black girls? What has been the main population and why, you think?
So my main population has been African American males and females under 18. But that's the population that I work with. So of course, it's going to be the one that I see the most trauma in. And I do feel that children with trauma are significantly affected more because they are still developing their brain, their concrete thinking, their bodies are still developing. They're still developing words to express their emotions. That's why a lot of times in our therapy, we do art therapy or play therapy. So people can, even adults can draw their trauma, because sometimes we don't have the words for trauma that has occurred in our early stages from 0 to 5. We don't have the words for the hurt. We don't have the words for the pain, the agony, the fear, but we just have the feeling of the fear, of the pain, of the hurt, of the wrongdoing. And sometimes when we speak, I like the fact that you said that sometimes children, especially children, are told to be silent even when they're speaking their truth regarding their trauma or speaking their shame. But they should not have shame or guilt or anything, because they were, now I don't say victims very much, but things happen to them. I, of course, are challenging them to change the language to being the survivor, but I don't want them to feel unnecessarily guilty, although I let everybody have their feelings, but we're challenging some of those things. And hopefully they're moving from guilt to empowerment. And so how and what can I do now? How can I tell my story? That's empowering for a child and an adult who has dealt with trauma, to tell their story in a way, and to not just tell the story of trauma, and to go back to experience that, all the feelings, all the thoughts, all the who did it, why you think they did it, how you felt, who you told, who responded, who didn't respond. Now also coming up to today and now in that story, and how are you the author of the rest of the chapters of your life? And how are you in control of the rest of the chapters in your life? And how are you, going to participate as the healthy person in the rest of the relationships in your life? Or are you going to continue the trauma, the drama, the shame, the guilt? You don't have to. And so that's the story that we're helping them to tell, that narrative that you are a survivor. You are not a victim. This may have happened to you, but what are we going to do moving forward? How are we going to empower others who may have been in the same position as you? So sometimes survivors are now becoming peer mentors. Survivors are now becoming therapists. Survivors are now becoming advocates. Survivors are now raising money for domestic violence. Survivors are becoming the people on the other end in those call centers. So survivors are now writing their stories of triumph. Survivor, we're all survivors of something, even if it's not trauma.
Right.
I wrote my story on some of the traumas that I experienced as an adult, though. Right. But as a child, it's deeper because we don't have the wherewithal to explain all of those emotions and thoughts and feelings, and we may be told to be silent and to hold that. So some people are holding their traumas for years on end and unable to speak their truth and unable to receive justice for whatever reasons. And so what does that mean to be silenced in your trauma, in your hurt, in your pain, and you did nothing wrong? Right. That is what we're doing in therapy,
That's real good. Being able to speak about what you've experienced without a muzzle, without being told, be quiet, shut up, go to your room. And that's why, as a mother, I find it so just liberating for me when my children talk to me, because, you know, my son could come over, he could be sitting at the end of the bed for 2 hours, we're talking, or my 10-year-old, 11 now, could be speaking her shame that she went through in school, or my teenager could be talking to me. And when I was a child, I wasn't given those opportunities to speak at all. Go sit down. You know, you might have just got a whooping with an extension cord. Mm-hmm. Shut up. You know, when you're getting hit, you're saying, your parent is saying, shut up, but it's like, it hurts, you know? And so after those experiences, I was not able to talk to anybody. So, you know, with my children, I don't curse at them. A lot of my friends are like, you never cursed at your girls? I never cursed at my girls because I understood how that felt when I grew up. So it's so important to speak your shame, find your network, find your love circle, your life mentor. I think that's so important. So can we ever become totally free of trauma?
I believe that that's a question that each person has to answer for themselves. Okay. For some people, the answer is yes, and for some people, the answer is no. But just like you say, speak shame, I also say speak life. And so you're speaking life. I'm teaching people that have endured trauma to speak life to yourselves, to affirm who you are every day. So listening to affirmations, speaking affirmations, and speaking them until you believe them. Mm-hmm. So you can say, I deserve my life to feel good to me, or you can live my life, you know, feels good to me. And your life will feel good to you because you will start attracting things that makes your life feel good to you. Mm-hmm. So it's not just saying it. Yeah. I am happy, healthy, whole, and complete. It's feeling it and doing it and living that my life is happy, healthy, whole, and complete. Yes. Okay? Yes. Until we start living it and manifesting it, that's when the trauma starts to disappear because now we're healing it.
Right.
But we have to address it.
Your words, it starts with a different mindset.
Yes. But it's not your words. It's your words connected to your thoughts, connected to your feelings. All three of those must align.
Must align. Okay.
Yes.
You can't say it and be feeling like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. You can't say, I'm happy, whole, and complete. You're not happy, whole, or complete. And your body is telling on you. Your emotions are telling on you.
Right. Because we know that is powerful, because we know when all of those connect. You could be saying something, but you really are not feeling it well inside. You have to allow the freedom of your body to open up and believe what you're saying, your affirmations. That is so true. That is so good. So we are wrapping up this conversation, and I just thank you so much for giving us those tools and gems about trauma. And we learned so much more about trauma and also relationships. So that was a little added bonus today. Thank you so much. So it's time in the show for something to sip on. So I'm going to ask you 3 amazing life questions, and I want you to answer them with as much clarity as you can. So the first question is, what brings you joy?
Let's see, what brings me joy? Waking up every day brings me joy. Also looking forward to self-improvement brings me joy. And right now what's bringing me joy is more creativity. So I'm reading this book, The Artist's Way. And so, you know, as academics, we use one side of our brain, but now I'm moving over to the other side, my more creative side, my more free side. I'm flowing. I'm not in the doing as much now, trying to move into the flowing. So I've created some grief baskets. I've created self-care baskets just to help people grieve well and to help people love themselves more, you know, or participate in more loving interactions with self. And I'm also doing that for myself. So taking more luxurious baths, putting more healthy foods in my body and healthy probiotics and prebiotics on a daily basis, just treating myself better because I want to be happy, healthy, whole, and complete. So I have to make it look like that. So the only way to do it is to do it.
Yeah.
So if I want to be a writer, I have to write, right? So start writing. And if you want to be a runner, then start running. That's how you accomplish what you say that you're going to do. So making my life more aligned to what I say that I want and actually manifesting what I want, that brings me joy.
Okay. Now, the next question is, what are you working on right now in your life?
Well, I just said some of it. What else am I working on? I am working on, I'm working on so much. I'm working on building my practice in Atlanta in my private practice. This January will be 2 years. And so I'm growing my private practice. So I was working full time and running my practice part time. And now I want to flip that. So I want to grow my private practice to full time and work part time at another, at my outside job. But I also would like to do more writing for magazines, and also more speaking engagements for organizations, churches, schools, and community organizations on what mental health is. So defining what is mental health, and also combining that with, some of the traumas and re-traumatization, especially in the African-American community around police violence and just violence in general in our underserved, low social economic status communities, to help us develop some of those protective factors, because my heart has always been in community. That's the reason why I started in this work. My dad always did outreach ministry in Harlem, New York, with substance abusing men. So that's where my heart is. That also is where my joy is. That's my passion, my purpose, to break generational cycles of trauma, of ignorance, and of stigmas that prevent us from living our best lives here on earth. And so I want us all to get to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy, of needs. And so we always talk about the food, the shelter, and housing, things like the love, belonging. But I want us to get to that pinnacle, which is during our life's work, during our purpose, living our best lives, making our lives feel like, we deserve to be happy, healthy, whole, and complete. Yeah.
You're working on so much for the world, I would say, for the community. And it's so needed. So many people need to feel whole and complete. And I think a lot of the world are stuck on the first pillar, safety, belonging. But to get to that apex, do we ever get to that self-actualization? Do many people ever get there? And so that's a powerful work that you're doing to help people realize their full potential and get through all the trauma. So the last question I have is, what has been your greatest life lesson?
My greatest life lesson is that no matter where you come from, that you can still make it. That's why my heart is always with the underdog. I love doing the work with the people that they say will never make it. People that have experienced multiple traumas, people that come from the worst families. And I don't say worst, but they say it's the worst neighborhoods, the worst families, the people who they say can't make it, the people that they say don't belong here, the people that have been incarcerated and come out and succeed, the people that have been locked up from juvenile on up, the people whose parents have been substance abusers, the people whose dads have been incarcerated, moms have been incarcerated, health issues, chronic substance abuse, multiple, But when you give them hope, when you let them know that there is a way, when you help them find out what their purpose, what their passion is, when they can identify that, when they know that they belong here and they feel like they have a place to belong, that they have people, that safe place that you talked about, when they have that circle of love, where is it the circle, create a love circle? Yes, a circle of love. Like all these things are the protective factors that keep us here. Yes. That don't keep us going back and forth, going back into the system, yes. Whether that's the foster care system or the prison system or failing in the education system. Like when we have people that love our children, we have people that love our men, that love our Black men, that love our Black women, that care for us, that catch us, that safety net, then we do well. We need to rebuild our community so we catch them. So therapists are part of that community. Coaches are part of that community. Our spirituality and our spiritual leaders are part of that community. And so how do we reconnect? Because we're disconnected right now. Right. How do we reconnect to our community? How do we reconnect to our purpose? How do we reconnect to our families? How do we reconnect to the health and the healthiness and the wholeness that we long for? But sometimes we have barriers getting there. And so I want us and me, because as I grow, my clients grow. And as my clients grow, I grow. So it's, a dual thing. So it's hard for me to talk about them and not talk about me and not talk about them. So, yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Truth. What are some of the resources that you would give someone right now who doesn't have a therapist, who doesn't have a shame network, someone to speak to? What are some of the resources that you would give someone that's listening right now?
Okay, so I talked about the NAP ministry. I didn't talk about this, Black Girls in Om. They provide yoga and meditation, and that's Om, O-M, Black Girl in Om. I talk about Command Your Day, which is a book by Cindy Trim that talks about how you command your day. You tell your day how it's going to be. Your day doesn't tell you. I would say take breaks during your work day or take breaks during your day if you're not working. Take a mental health day. Take a day off. Yes. I would say visit a spa. And if you can't afford a spa, then treat yourself to a spa in your bathroom. Give yourself a foot massage, give yourself a manicure, take a luxurious bath. Those are all free things that you can do. I would say recite or listen to affirmations. You can find some by Louise Hay and other people on YouTube for free. Mm-hmm. I would say use your journal. If you don't have a journal, you can buy a journal for $1 at the dollar store. Or you can write on a sheet of notebook paper or a napkin, whatever you need to do to get your feelings and your thoughts out. You can vent to friends. You can join a support group. So NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, has free support groups for anybody dealing with mental health concerns. Or if you have a family member that is dealing with any mental health concerns, they have a support group for you to support your family member with mental health concerns. Also therapy for Black girls. And there's also one therapy, I want to say, for Black men. It's called Therapy for Black Men. And the Association of Black Psychologists. And also, if you do not have insurance, you can reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And they don't just speak to people who are suicidal or homicidal. They also speak if you have any mental health concern or anxiety or depression or stress or just don't know who else to call. And that is a 24-hour hotline, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And that phone number is 1-800-273-6255.
Thank you so much. And how do our listeners get in touch with you? If they want to work with you, if they want you to speak, how do they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me by calling 501-500-4673. Or they can reach me on my website at drtruthandassociates.com. That's DRTRUTHANDASSOCIATES.com.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Truth, dropping those life gems. Our audience is going to gain so much from this show. And if you all need to contact Dr. Truth, please don't hesitate with her resources. We're going to put those on our website, which launches in January. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So friends, I hope you enjoyed that show just as much as I did. For more information on Dr. Truth, please go to our podcast page on Apple Podcasts. And please go ahead and rate, comment, or subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere this podcast is available. I'm KK Smith, and remember, you can always celebrate wins and get back up again inside the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop.